Okay. It's interesting. If you ask one of the reps, previously, if I would jump on a call with them or shadow them, they'd really get very nervous. Being in the trenches with them and being shoulder to shoulder, getting back to your question, what's my biggest learning and perception of AI? I would say that, it really needs...
GTM AI podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K, where you get the latest with AI and GTM today.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is I, Jonathan Carpenter, aka Coach K, and this is the GTM AI podcast. I have with me one of my favorite people from the enablement space who's also very passionate about AI, Tas Hirani. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. People don't know this. I actually do a couple of podcasts, and we did another podcast on another topic on the State of Sales Enablement podcast, and had a fascinating topic. And the subject of today, which we'll bring up today and give some details. I won't spoil the fun, but I'll let you do it in your intro. But what I'm really excited about is that okay, I'm going to spoil the fun. So really quick about you. You've been an enablement professional for a long time. You're working with both large and small orgs from an enablement perspective. You've done a lot of things with tech in general, not just AI. So you're very well equipped and aware of how to deal with change management in general with tech with large sales team, which is a fascinating topic and something that, at least for myself being in the community of enablement, that you're well respected in the field and people think very highly of you. And so I'm just really grateful to have you here. But one thing I'm going to tease before we get into it, and then I'll have you introduce yourself, is that you had this fascinating experiment to where you decided to take on a sales hat in your enablement role. So you're a full-time enablement leader, and since August, I know you've just ended your term in sales, but you put on your sales hat and did your enablement job at the same time to get an idea of what's going on, and had some fascinating things, which was the topic of the last time. But we're going to talk about more of the AI things and what you think now that you've sat in the seat and now you're back out of it, and your thoughts on it. But before we get to that, so I'm talking a lot and I don't usually do this for intros. Number one, I admire you for doing that. And number two, before we get into some of the details, I'd love to have you tell me, or at least tell the audience more about you. What's your background like, and why do you like this whole AI discussion? Because you've posted a lot about it on LinkedIn and other places about your thoughts. Yeah. Just give me the view of Tas for people who understand who you are, the non-LinkedIn version. How about that?
Cool. Okay. So if you were stalking me on LinkedIn, you would see that I kind of learned my craft during my GE, General Electric years, where this was called commercial excellence. And that's where GE was very famous for: Six Sigma, process improvement, and applying to business areas and applying excellence to sales operations. Anyone who was in a role that was facing a customer and using those Six Sigma methodologies to bring that to life was absolutely fascinating. I learned everything you can ever possibly want to know about master data management, about blowing up databases by injecting new data, about tiering people's accounts and prospecting. And I learned so much. It was absolutely fascinating, all the way through to just how to build a curriculum for salespeople through every aspect of negotiation, closing, you name it. I've been there. I've covered that remit. And my real background was I spent 10 years in finance. So I've got a very analytical and data-driven approach to what I do. So I'm one of those enablers that will actually come in with, from a revenue perspective, this is where I'm going to move. This is why I'm looking at this. So I always have that as a focus in terms of everything I do. This is either going to improve time to cash, or it's going to just increase capacity. So I always have a, so what? Why am I looking at this? Why am I doing this viewpoint? So I guess that's the non-LinkedIn version of what makes me tick. But I'd also say that with every enablement professional, they have this sort of je ne sais quoi, or this little mojo. And I think I share that little mojo where that moment where something clicks and people get that aha moment is like that warm, fuzzy feeling for me.
Yes.
I see it's so addictive.
I'm aware of it. It's addictive. You're like, ooh, I love that. I'll do it again. Yeah, I love it.
That's my reason for being, right? It's why I won't drop that word for my job title, because I think at my core, that's the thing that I'm most addicted to.
I think that's one reason why I like doing AI stuff now, because I have that same experience with people now with AI. Like as soon as the lights go off in their mind of, whoa, you can do that. It's the funnest thing in the world to kind of blow people's minds in a good way. And then even funner is when they come back to you and said, I know you showed me this X and Y, but I've done Z, B, and 2. and they take what you do and make it better or their own application of their own selves. I love that. That's just awesome. Well, let's get into a little bit. I know I teased this whole thing, but tell me a little bit more about your experiment. And we're going to get into how that's changed your view on AI tooling, because obviously being an enabler, part of your purview is to improve performance, obviously, of the team and reduce friction. I'm just curious on your thoughts with AI. So tell me more about the background of your experiments, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. Last year, I was really seeing a lot of change in terms of the way that I was going about enabling specifically the sales team and the sales persona. The market for salespeople, a lot of market forces were making things really challenging for people. A lot of
Mhm.
companies have really flatlined in terms of performance. Certain areas that had really boomed during kind of COVID, having the opposite trend. So I was seeing market shifts, but also the dynamic of what's expected from a salesperson, doing more with less, being smarter, being more personalized in their approach. How on earth do you achieve that? And actually, as an enabler, not getting in their way. The stop the
Right.
show moment for an enablement is
Right.
just like that era is gone in SaaS startup land for
Like,
me
long
anyway.
time ago. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's almost, I've been really seeing that shift and thinking about what it's like for those salespeople today and thinking this is so much tougher. If you're not
Mhm.
writing like those killer emails, like spray and
Oh,
pray is gone, dude.
right.
No one's
Yeah.
reading those emails.
That's right.
And, the way that you're actually connecting with people, how are you achieving that when you're zooming left and center? Like, how are connections happening? How are you actually getting through to people? I was finding this kind of aspect fascinating because I'm having the same challenge as an enabler connecting with people remotely and I'm putting myself in the sales seat. I felt like I needed to get back to that pain so I could have that empathy for the team that I'm supporting. Because I felt at
Yes.
some point that I was a part of the friction and not a part of the flow. And I think when you
Uh-huh.
when you actually sit in the seat and you feel the pain, you're really in someone's shoes and you're actually having a go. I wanted to understand where they were spending their time, what was really the stuff that for someone who, like me, covers enablement and kind of revenue generation and ops, where is that pain? Where is the stuff that's really like causing those issues? So when you sit in the seat and you think, okay, as an AE, I've got a bunch of accounts. Where do I start? Where's the low hanging fruit? What's a way to go about this? Right. I have a dark account. And when I say dark account, no one's actually touched this account for years. I need to assess
Yeah.
whether it's a fit. What are the tools that, the AEs are using? And, everyone's got LinkedIn. Many people have got LinkedIn Navigator. You've also got ChatGPT or whatever, Perplexity or whatever you're using. What are really my reps actually using? What am I using to actually like really stalk and uncover what's going on in my accounts? And I think this was just like Pandora's box for me. It is fascinating going down this little rabbit hole
Yeah.
because there's a ton of tooling that you can use. And I'm telling you now, you can just go into ChatGPT and ask, what tool should I use? Because there are so many. And I'm telling you now, it's as an enabler, going down that rabbit hole and actually having a go is the best way to learn what works and what doesn't work. But, and my big but, stuff that I liked and I shared with my reps got some really interesting reactions. This is where we get into the change management aspect because,
Yeah. Yeah.
what worked for one rep or for me personally, some of the others were, yeah, I don't have any confidence in AI actually getting that. It doesn't sound like me. My prospect is going to know that it's not me. If I haven't actually felt the pain and written that email myself based on my own knowledge
Yeah.
that I've generated and felt the pain, it's not
Yeah.
authentic, not going to move me forward. And every rep's at a different point, right? So every person with AI adoption is at a different point. You got to respect where people are at, right? So even as an enabler, I'm saying, this is how you should do it, guys. Here's a best practice. Actually, in real world, it's not as vanilla as that because people will have their own need to personalize, their own need
Yeah.
to feel the pain, their own needs for
Understand.
discovery. And so all these tools that are going to shortcut that are actually going to shortcut
Right.
or prevent them from really learning about a customer, an account, a person, right? And if I break through all the fluff what I'm really trying to say here is nothing can shortcut effective account research because it's different for every person. And what we're talking about here is vanilla AI is great, but we all have our own unique learning styles, right? And we've all learned that as enablers, that every one of us is different. You've got to meet people where they're at. So the same thing applies when you're suggesting tips and techniques with AI tools. You've got to also come with like your bag of skills. In this situation, I found X is really good. In this situation, maybe this person would prefer Y. And what I mean by that is you've got some super visual people who much prefer like the tools that are helping them with kind of this is the strategic
Right.
way this account looks. You've got other people who are really good with just vanilla ChatGPT because it's all text. I don't know if I'm making sense to you.
No, it makes sense. I'm with you.
Yeah, totally. And I think when people think about playing around with these tools, I think we sometimes lose sight of being user obsessed. And it lands differently with different people because your
Mhm.
rep at the end of the day, what I learned by sitting in the seat, they are working on accounts they're trying to close. They're working on accounts they're trying to break into. They're working on a really stressful a person who keeps emailing tons and tons of questions and they don't think that
Yeah.
deal's even going to move forward. And with all of those multitasking points going on, pressure from the marketing team to get people registered on the next cool event webinar, getting yourself out with boots on the ground in front of your actual customer and users, attending events, all the rest of it. What they're actually doing and showing up and doing, how can you really help with AI when you've got all of that going on? It's actually just not making it complicated. My biggest learning was keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something where this concept around the whole AI is crazy because there's a lot of tools that do require some sort of change management adoption. There's some tools that don't as much because a
Mm.
lot of times it sits underneath like an infrastructure and drives change. And other ones require major behavior change because it changes processes a lot. So I think it's a balance between understanding what's the actual job to be done and what is actually needed to move the dial around performance. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times people focus on the tools versus what's actually trying to be done in the first place. It makes things way too complicated in the first place. Like you try to fit the process to the tool versus the tool fit the process or fit the tool to the end result and outcome. And I think AI is more able now to be adjusted to that because before you had to adjust to going to another platform and doing a certain thing and doing something else versus now where AI can be flexible enough and run on its own to where it's going to the reps. Instead of rep going to the platform comes the rep. Instead
Mm.
of the rep adjusting and going to the platform at a certain point in the stage, the AI already knows the context and does it as they do it live. So it's like it's just a fascinating world we're in because it's changing how we've interacted and worked with tech in general. So now you're on this other side. I'm curious, finishing your experiment, what have you changed in your recommendations or how you've approached what you work with people with AI in general? Like how you think about it now versus before, if anything's changed?
Yeah, I would say my perception has changed a lot, and the tone of my messaging and even how I talk about things, I would say has changed a lot. I think it's interesting. If you ask one of the reps, previously, if I would jump on a call with them or shadow them, they'd really get very nervous. Being in the trenches with them and being shoulder to shoulder, getting back to your question, what's my biggest learning and perception of AI? I would say that, it really leans in back on your initial point. I find that where there's the least amount of friction for the user and the AI is actually being responsive and a part of the working pattern, those are the really killer ones. And what I mean by that is you've got a meeting coming up and we have obviously push notifications to remind you what's the last conversation you've had and just to remind you where you're at. Because when you're multitasking, you can't remember every single conversation and everything that's going on. And I love those sort of things. Using conversation intelligence to make it one click easy to push information into your CRM. Because let's be honest, everyone's opportunities have got less than 1% of what we've talked about in your CRM. We all know this. So making it so much easier to just do some of the really admin-y tasks that are always bottom of the list to actually build that in so it's so easy to do. those are the things where I feel they're so much more powerful, because for anybody else other than the rep as well, it really helps you wrap that team around to collaborate and support the rep to be successful. And so my biggest learning is friction. Remove friction. Every
Yes.
point of friction. AI is there to be in context at the right time. And it's about this just in time. And it's not just about
Yeah.
reducing admin. It has to be served at the right time in context.
You know what's funny is that's my theme for this year too, is removing I posted about it back in early January, late December. It was like, not just removing friction for anybody I work with, but me personally. Like, what's the things getting in my way friction wise? Because when you look at all the different things that AI can do with the new agent capabilities and automations and all sorts of stuff, like there's so many things now that I can automate that are the pain in the neck to do manually. And now when you have, what the fascinating side of it is that now that I have more and more ability to automate those things, it's giving me more and more time to do the things that are more creative in nature, more human. Does that make sense? It's really weird. Like I have more time to connect and to do thought leadership or to experiment on different things with AI and play. It's this world where I think, for me personally, I was so used to doing all these mundane, boring things all the time that I didn't know what a world would be like where I didn't have to do those things. Now that more and more is taken off my plate, my brain has more and more space to do other things. Like it's just this world where I'm like, this is awesome. I love it. And that concept around removing friction for enablement specifically, and I would say this with anyone who, because I know a lot of listeners who may or may not have an enablement team, but in the past, like I said before, a lot of legacy tech required people to adjust to the tech. And now it's like you have the ability to literally remove the friction with different AI tech that can not get in the way, but literally falls in line where it needs to be and to help perform it. I feel like, I don't know how this is a big good description for it, but I feel like in the past technology was like dead weight that people were hauling up the
Mm,
hill where it
mm,
was supposed to be helping them, and it was really dragging them down because like people are like, I'm trying to get to this sale, but I can't get there because I have to go to the 12th place and take all these notes and all this other stuff. And
mm.
now it's like people are like, you're starting to take the rocks off and people are like starting to go up there like, this is so much nicer. That's as hard as I thought it was. That's how I feel
100%.
like it is. What do you think about
Let's cast our minds back. Even when I go back
that?
10 years, 15 years, and I've been in the space a while, so I'm giving away my age. But whenever
Right.
you onboarding a salesperson, they had more tech to log into and get access to than any other person in any other team. Let's be frank. And that's always been what I've known. And then we've
Right.
tried to inject additional AI tools into that tech stack.
Mhm.
Honestly, I've spent the last 9 months reducing the volume. Really speaking, I'm lucky I'm one of those with a Salesforce CRM. So I had so many things that I was paying for in addition, which Salesforce does itself now, stripping those out and then replacing those with tools that can actually just be smarter. To your point, reducing the admin where the rep's not even seeing it really interact behind the scenes. 100%. I've been more moving in that direction to actually get rid of the stuff that I want to be able to free their capacity up to do what actually is the human element of selling and just remove the non-human elements of selling, which at the end of the day, you need to do because everyone wants to understand where's your opportunity at, what's going to be the value of it,
Yeah.
who you in competition with, all the rest of those things. But we've got so
Right.
much wraparound AI, it can take care of those things.
Yeah.
That's where I've been focusing my attention and definitely more so having sat in the seats. Let's remove the mundane. Let's not ask them to fill a field in the CRM because we want to do some
Right.
statistic on there's marketing touch or now it's a sales qualified account. Like who gives?
I know.
Because
Well, see, yeah,
honestly, there's like a
this
tech somewhere
world.
that can tick that box. Like, why do we need someone to fill
Right.
in?
You know what's funny though is it's this. I know momentum which you were working on before, but like, it's a good example of this whole concept of things running in the background. Because like when you think about all the teams, the value of what happens inside of customer conversations, and of all the teams in the organization that want to know information from that, that's what
Yeah.
has driven a lot of CRM data entry stuff because people are like RevOps wants one thing and marketing wants another thing and then finance wants everyone wants this information. The only person to get it is either sales or CS, one of the two. And
Mm,
now when you have AI taking the person out of it so they can actually focus on their role and still give the people what they want from data, that's just an example of how powerful it can be. So you can reduce friction, get the data you want, and still enable good performance for the team. Just that kind of mindset is a shift, because I was on sorry to pontificate for a second. I was on a webinar. It was on a methodology training. And they were talking about, it wasn't me presenting, it was someone else presenting from a very well-known methodology. And the person was a sales leader, and they were actually more on the CS side over expansions. And they were saying something like, we were talking about data and how to get data from people. And like, that's why you pay their salary, so they can do data entry. And you should require it. And all the same things I've heard for years. I'm like, that's so old school thinking, because that thinking has been the driver forever, and it's never changed any behavior. Like, it's on your salary, you should do the CRM. Like, who cares? I think it's just in a place where and I'm telling you this for a reason, because I want to ask you a question, is that AI, I feel like, is like we were at driving, or I shouldn't driving, we're riding horses, we're in cars, and AI is like literally we're starting to build planes with agents, meaning that we're so used to understanding what roads to go on and what mountains not to go through and the weather and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And it takes 3 days to drive across the country. And now all of a sudden we're building planes where it takes you 3 hours, much more comfortable environment, super fast, but it requires you thinking about what you're doing differently. So even though the starting and end point may be the same, the how you get there is way different. So you have to let go of a lot of things to get to that next level. You know what I mean? So like, I'm saying all this to just point out, saying, what do you see changing for both enablement and for sales or anybody in go-to-market as a result of AI, because of its capabilities that we're not fully realizing, or we don't even know it's possible now? What do you think?
Yeah, I think what's changing is you want to make it's about the visibility, right? So
Yeah.
I think about the example you gave, sales methodology and using really smart tools like Momentum as an example. For
Right.
me, when I'm thinking about a specific deal, I am thinking about the fact that based on what I've now got, people could actually make an assessment on if I've been optimistic or pessimistic with my forecasting category. That's what my sales leader cares about. The product team can go into that specific deal, and I was on site with actual users getting hands-on.
Mhm.
FYI, for people who don't know, I actually sell an AI SaaS solution.
I
So
know.
I
This is why we gotta get talk about this. Yeah.
yeah, so this was like engineers actually getting hands-on with an AI SaaS solution to actually embody themselves to less junior engineers. And product would love to hear or actually use what I've generated through recordings and conversations and feedback from workshops with engineers. The product team want to hear what users' feedback is like. Where do they struggle? Have they got too many things on the screen? And so what the product team and engineering team are interested in is completely different, to your point, in terms of what the sales leader is looking at. The
Right.
sales leader might want to know, well, has actually discussed pricing with that customer. And they should just be able to ask that. They shouldn't even need to have to ask me if I was out sick. They should just be able to ask their CRM. In terms of customer success, them thinking, wow, how tricky is this deployment going to be? They should be able to just interrogate how complex is the product, how complex the intake of documentation, how good is the data set that the customer's got. So to answer your question in a simple term, we as enablers think about just that salesperson. What that salesperson does impacts every single part of an organization, all the way up to the
Right.
CEO, president, you name it.
Right.
Opening up that data that you're collecting through conversations and all the rest of it, removing the need for them to input just mindless fields of data because the AI can do, means that you're actually now supplying marketing with what's going to be the next customer story, case
Right. Right.
study. You're supplying product and marketing with a minefield of data on how you actually interact with the product without them having to be on those calls. Honestly, I feel like the possibilities are like Pandora's box here, because it's really about making it accessible and actually serving it up correctly to those different stakeholders. And that's not something we've ever really done before. And I feel like for us as enablement
Right.
people, removing the barriers, removing the friction, and not making that a whole effort in itself, and actually thinking about your CRM as a database for everybody to access and designing it that way.
that concept is fascinating to me. Like having a ability to be, if a world existed where you had this promptable database gathered from whatever sources that anyone could go into. So marketing asks their questions, product asks their questions, CEO asks his questions. It's just there available. That is fat. We've never had that before. So that's crazy. I'm going to shift gears just a hair, but going now into you enabling a team that's selling AI, like what are the things you're hearing from the marketplace, like from a just selling motion? Is it yeah, I'll just leave it there. What's both the good things and what people are excited about? What's the challenge when people are trying to sell an AI tech? What's coming up for you guys?
Honestly, this is the most fun time ever to sell AI because you've got people who were risk takers who adopted early, and we've got customers who started on the journey in 2023 and they're really mature down this path, and some who've done
Yes.
phenomenal stuff to adopt AI in their organizations. You've got
Mhm.
others who are still struggling to understand the use case because it's really around, okay, the AI does that. How do I plug that into my process? Not really actually
Right.
thinking, what do I need? And what's the right AI solution for that? So there's still a
Right.
little bit of this kind of confusion and education going on. But I think for me, the interesting thing has been now selling AI into companies is actually the shift in balance between who has the power between business and IT. This is the real interesting area for me when you're watching companies buy AI. And the reason why I think this is super interesting is because normally, if it's the business have a challenge and they're seeing a way that
Mhm.
AI can solve that and be a part of what they do naturally, and it
Right.
enhances performance, it creates capacity, maybe it reduces diagnostic time in our
Whatever.
specific
Yeah.
business. So they're seeing a way that it actually just reduces friction and it makes things a better place to work. In those situations where it comes out of the business budget, it's great. It's singing, it's humming, we're selling really well. Where we're seeing organizations where IT are like, oh, you're doing something AI. We want to understand that. No, you can't actually buy that business specific AI solution because we're going to use something generic. And they don't really understand what the business needs.
Yeah,
They
totally.
want to come in heavy hand and actually impose a generic AI solution because it's got these
Yeah.
two wicked acronym letters in it. And that kind of I'm seeing just fail. And the reason why I have tons of respect for IT professionals, and I'm not really trying to put
Oh,
anybody
I
down.
know.
What I'm really trying to actually say here is that when it comes to business specific context solutions, you can't apply a generic AI software to do that. You're not trying
Right.
to actually just give everybody chat GPT, but within a professional firewall. Because
Well, but that's what
far,
most people
far,
have done is that, or like through Microsoft,
Copilot.
losing my mind.
Yeah.
What's it? Copilot. Thank you. Sorry. I talk about it all the time. Copilot, like the same thing. Like people throw in Copilot. Like, hey, we're AI enabled. I'm like, that's not AI
No,
enabled.
no.
That's just
And
throwing
this
yet
is
another tool.
it's just a recipe for fail because
Exactly.
it's not actually reducing friction. They're having to go into some random other portal and then they come back and they go, oh, Tas, no one's actually using that. And the trial that we did, everybody really loved it. And I was like, if the IT team, that's where the budget's held, but you used those two magic letters, so it went sideways or went left, whatever.
Right.
And this
That's right.
is where it's failing. And so the market has shifted to actually now wanting to get users hands on to try to see if, how they react to it. Can they see themselves using it? And this is where I'm seeing the shift now between organizations where it's like somebody in IT making a random decision and actually now coming back to the business and giving the business back the autonomy to actually say, who's the actual user? Let them get hands on, let them test it. Let's actually see. And so this is coming full circle, but
Damn.
everybody a different level of maturity on this curve.
It's fascinating. So what I think we're in this world where people are really getting AI and they're frustrated because they're doing like a Copilot run and thinking that's AI. Like, what do you suggest to people who are, I'll say, considering what AI or how? Let me back up a second. Sorry, my question's not making any sense. When someone's looking at AI, how would you suggest they go about when they're buying AI tech and what to attach it to? I can tell you my opinion. I'm just curious of what you say, both as enabler of people who are selling AI and then actually using it. Like how do you walk customers through of like how to decide or what to do around using AI or not?
Yeah, I think it's for me, I think it's really simple and it doesn't need to be complicated. When I'm speaking
Right.
to external customers and I'm talking to them about the Quad AI solution, what I'm talking to them about is the demo is a mock-up. What you need to understand is the point in time when someone's going to be actually using this, it needs to be almost invisible. There needs to be no
Mm.
friction in how the user's going to interact with this. It needs to be a natural part of the way they're working. And we want to see if it's going to improve the accuracy. Is it going to improve
Yes.
speed? And what we want to do is a test with and without the AI. Let's get
Mm.
somebody who's super experienced, been in your company for absolutely years, and we're going to get them hands on with
Right.
this. And then we're going to take somebody who's fairly new and we're going to get them hands on with this. And if this is a game changer for the person who's been there for years and years, and it's still improving the accuracy and it's improving their speed, then, you know, this is probably a good solution for you to go ahead with. If it's only improving things for the newbie because they're younger and more curious and they're naturally more attuned to using these types of technologies, then maybe it's not the right solution for you. And that honestly, for me, is how, from a customer perspective, you know that it's the right solution to go with. Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
the Insta era and people who are all more comfortable with using all these social platforms that have got tons of AI in them that they used to. Like my kids
Right.
sit on Snapchat. So they use Snapchat
Yeah.
in AI. Anyway, we'll not go and give them too much of a plug. Moving swiftly on.
Right.
To your point, it's really
Right.
around if AI is seamless and actually moving the dial, keep it super simple. You want to see
Yeah.
speed and accuracy. To your point, are we removing friction? Are we removing some of those menial tasks so you can actually use the amazing engineer, Mr. Customer,
Mhm.
to actually do the stuff that matters in front of a machine rather than actually, oh gosh, what was that part number?
Right.
That for me is thinking about the end user. But the other side of that question you asked me was as an enabler, when I'm thinking about my internal sales team, it's exactly the same thing, right? So I want solutions like Momentum to push all of the stuff for my sales methodology into the CRM so my sales rep can actually do the stuff that matters, talk to customers.
Which is talk to the customers. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good theme in general because it's the thought of, again, going back to, I'm a big fan of jobs to be done. So what's the job to be done for the sales rep? It's not to do data entry. That's not what they're there for salary. Their salary is to keep them there to frickin' talk to customers and sell deals. That's what they're there for. So I think in general, people need to rethink the job to be done of whatever role they're thinking about and then seeing how AI can fit that job to be done.
100%.
But
I'd add another dynamic. My other hat I wear is obviously kind of revenue, driving revenue and operations. And there's always this tendency on, oh, I really want to provide this analysis and this report because it's going to be really cool. So I need people to do this one single piece of data entry. And I would challenge all of those people who are in the same seat as me to think about, you've got all these amazing AI tools. How can you do that automatically yourself?
yeah,
I
yeah,
would challenge each one of us to think about, how did that meeting go? AI can tell you that. So you don't need an AE to enter a meeting outcome. We should all be really thinking about this, right? It's like, how do I
yeah.
stop that silly data entry moment, which no one gives about, which is forgotten after the meeting? How do I make the solution do that? How do you design these into your processes? This is where I think, for me, it's been a game changer being in the sales seat because now I'm thinking about, I don't actually remember to actually fill in those simple things. But if it
Right.
was saying to me, these are the useful things. Oh, you just had a meeting with a prospect. This is what I think should be entered into your CRM. Do you think, did I get it right?
Or
That's
even
what,
there's AI tools and there's not momentum as well. Let's put a plan in someone's brain listening. There's other AI tools that do during call things. I think the balance is just understanding what's distracting or not, but there's a lot of AI tech that understands the context and can serve up what you need to do on the call. So someone can have the adoption on the call. So there's lots of options out there. It's just understanding
totally.
where's the
Yeah.
pain?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you need done?
Totally. I
So
tested a lot of those and that's super interesting. For me personally, I didn't like the pop-ups. But what I would say is I tested it out with some of our desk-based reps who were doing a lot of cold calling. They freaking
yeah,
loved it. And this is what I mean. Like, you've got to personalize because it might not be a one size fits all for your company. What I would say is a lot of those AI texts that were popping up almost, oh, the customer said that. Here is what you need to say. And it was a couple of bullet points. Or you see those cards pop up. or competitive kind of notes, super useful for certain people, especially you've got newer reps.
Right.
They freaking love that. But shove that in front of someone who's been here a while, or for me personally, I'm not great at multitasking. I just close the thing that's scrolling with a transcript in front of my face. But those sort of AI technologies, 100%, if people are listening and they haven't explored those, 100% test them. They're free to test. You should 100% get people in your team to get on and try them. I think it's also fascinating to actually listen to how people react to them, because for me, any single little difference you can make in converting cold calls, if that's going to help, then you really do need to weigh up the reward and the risk of investing those. I think it's super
Totally. Travis, you're amazing. I think I might have to have you come back a little bit later when you have back in the seat for a little time, because I know you just barely ended your sales journey. But fascinating discussion. I love your thoughts. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll make sure that we'll share your LinkedIn profile and I think you have a newsletter. I'll make sure I have that in the show notes as well. I just want to say thank you, respect, and admire you so much, and just appreciate you.
Yeah, back to you guys. For anybody else, if ever you've got a question, I love using LinkedIn to just discuss business problems, business challenges. If you message me because you've got something going on in your world and you want to spitball with someone, I am 100% up for that, because I will come right back at you and do the same. Whenever I've got a challenge, that's how I solve my issues. Just use your network. To anyone that's listening, thank you so much. Hope you learned something. If you didn't, drop me a note too.
Okay, here's something. Tell me so we can make sure. But I think you did great. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.